Your gender roles are ingrained in your genes and have been for as long as we've been human. They are not your choice. They are indisputable, unchangeable, and immutable. They are an inheritance from your prehistoric ancestors. There are two types of prehistoric agriculture. One is shift agriculture, which uses hand tools like a hoe or a digging stick, and the other is plow agriculture, which uses a plow. In shift agriculture, anybody can use a hand tool effectively, and so there is no effective division of labor. Men, women, children, women with a child on their back, you can all contribute equally. In plow agriculture, you need upper body strength and a strong grip. This requires men. Men work in the fields to provide for their families, and women take their place in the home with the child and home-centered tasks where they belong. Studies show that if your ancestors practiced shift agriculture, you are more likely to be involved in the labor market, national politics, and in making choices in your household today. You're talking about societies like they're these long, stable, never-changing things. The societies do change, and so do the gender roles that are reinforced by them. They change quickly, and they change permanently. For instance, let's look at West African societies that were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. Slavers obviously stole men because they were more valuable. That left behind societies where women outnumbered men 2-to-1 sometimes. Women stepped into traditionally masculine roles. And after the slave trade ended and sex ratios reverted back to normal, the gender roles didn't. Women in those societies are still more likely to be in the labor force and to be employed in higher ranking occupations and be involved in making responsible choices for the household. Closer to home, let's look at our society in World War II, when men were highly mobilized. Gender roles were left behind. When the men came back, the women did not go back into the homes. Gender roles were changed permanently. You talk about huge cataclysmic events that shape society, but we all know the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. In every society, there are thousands of small, persistent pressures that reinforce the gender roles of that society. Everything from the toys you play with to the language you speak reinforce those gender roles. Let's look at language. Data shows that women who speak languages with grammatical gender markers are less likely to attend college and participate in the economy and national politics. They're also less likely to be able to access land or credit on their own. Society matters a lot when it comes to gender roles. In spatial reasoning tests, the only indicator of score difference between genders is the society those people live in. In patriarchal societies, men scored over 36% better than women in these tests. In matrilineal societies, there was no difference whatsoever. The abilities of the men and women didn't change that were involved, only their culture. You cannot escape the gender roles reinforced by your culture. Even you admit that gender roles are variable based on society, but no society is static and unchanging, preserved forever, except Pompeii. Masculine and feminine qualities are subjective. They're constantly changing. Men in the 18th century, not that long ago, wore high heels, wigs, something else, silk stockings. Men today would ridicule that as ridiculously effeminate. They prefer well-tailored suits and a shocking lack of wigs and silk. Let's look at one of the longest running societies, continuous societies in Western culture, Rome. In ancient Rome, what it means to be a woman or a female biologically has not changed in millennia. Their gender roles of being a woman, though, have changed. In ancient Rome, women couldn't vote, they couldn't hold office, they weren't even allowed to speak or show up to political meetings. They were legally the property of their husbands or fathers. They couldn't own their own land. Today, that couldn't be further from the truth in Rome. Rome has even elected their first premier who was a woman, Georgiana Maloney. Maybe societies do inform gender roles, but societies can change. Therefore, so too can gender roles. Conclusion. Gender roles seem inescapable. Everything from the grammatical structure of your language to whether or not your Neolithic ancestors used a plow determine whether or not you think your place is in the House or the White House. However, when societies change, so too can gender roles. No society is going to stay perfectly preserved forever, whether you call it progress or losing traditions. No one can deny that societies are changing faster than ever today, and so are the gender roles. Broken barriers seem radical one generation, accepted the next, and the expected norm the next. Gender roles are evolving far faster now than at any point in history and are far from immutable.